Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Lopez. I'm a real estate agent with Compass. I'm here with Jen Robbins. She is with
Hi.
Equity Title. Tonight, we're going to talk to you about the home selling process and what that entails. Uh, to give you a little bit of information about myself, I started tutoring when I was in middle school, and it was something that I just was very passionate about. And when I became a real estate agent, I decided to continue teaching. I love providing information for people. It's one of my biggest passions. And then I meet people like Jen that also have that passion of just sharing information. One of the biggest things on why people have a hard time, not just trusting real estate agents, but also um, deciding whether or not to sell is the lack of information. There's just so much out there. You can do a Google search, but it just won't get you that same information. John and I, we just love helping people. We just want to make sure that people do know what they're doing, or at least know what questions to be asking. Um, John, how long have you been with Equity Title?
I've been with Equity Title for about 6 months, but I've
Okay.
been in the escrow industry for 18 years.
Yes, so very knowledgeable. And as I mentioned, she's always very willing to help.
hmm
So the first step, when people come to us and say, "Hey, I want to sell my house," that's where you sit down with the real estate agent, interview one that works with you. Once you have met that person that you do want to work with, that agent runs what is called a CMA, or should run one. A CMA is a comparative market analysis. This kind of helps determine what the price of the home should be set at so that it is competitive. One of the biggest reasons houses sit on the market longer than they should is it wasn't priced accordingly. And then that's where people start asking, what's wrong with the house?
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest questions we get. What's wrong with the house?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. It might just be overpriced. And it's something to really take into consideration, especially when there's huge market changes. We've seen those interest rates change. Um, so before we even go live with the listing and make sure that yard sale or yard sign is up on the front lawn, we run a second CMA when that happens so that we make sure, especially this year, we saw a big change this year. Anybody that was shopping at the beginning of the year, that first quarter, we saw how everything was selling so
Yes.
fast, very, very crazy. It was kind of like, it felt like Frogger situation, right? Like
Yes.
you want to stick your toe in, you're like, oh, yep.
Yeah.
It's like, you just want to submit an offer, but it's like it gets rejected right away
Yeah.
almost like.
Yeah.
But no, it's very important to set the price accordingly to what the market is calling for. So very different to how it was 3 months ago, 6 months ago,
Absolutely.
to how it is now, and even what this week has changed the market once again to how it was last week.
hmm
Interest rates went up again, and so tied with a low inventory, now more than ever, it's very important to set the right price. So once you have decided on what the price of the home will be, we go and open title. And to do so, we contact Jen, we contact a title and escrow person, and we say, hey, I want to open title for X address, right? Jen here is going to tell us a little bit about what opening title means.
So when you open title, we run a report in regards to the property and the sellers, and make sure it's free of any liens or encumbrances and anything like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it sets us up for success that we know ahead of time what we have to work with.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so in this report, you can find so many different things, liens, encumbrances, as she was mentioning. What is a lien?
A lien is money owing against the property. Somebody
Okay.
can place a lien, let's say a construction company. They
Yeah.
did work on your home. They don't feel that they were paid, they can put a lien on your property.
Okay.
And it has to be paid at closing.
So can anybody put a lien on any property?
There's different criteria that has to be met in order to put the lien on the property.
Okay.
But if it qualifies, then yes, they can put the lien on
One
the
of the
property.
biggest ones is when people go and flip homes and they kind of just don't pay their contractors.
Yes.
There are different reasons. Maybe the contractor didn't finish their job and the contractor still feels entitled to that payment. But these are the kind of issues we want to make sure are resolved before it even goes on the market, which is why we call Jen to open title before we even list the property for sale, right? So this report, I wish I could show you it, but a lot of times, like, it's over 20 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, thankfully I have Jen and Jen's team that can help me translate all this, because even me working in this industry, right, those title reports can be a little bit tricky to read. So she'll go over them and tell you exactly, like, this needs to be taken. It's almost like a to-do list.
Yes,
these are the things.
Great way to explain that. Yeah.
These are the things you need to take care of before you sell the home. Otherwise, it doesn't have a clean and clear title. And that's what we're always aiming for. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, there's also title insurance. Title insurance, well, it's insurance, right? Coverage for both parties. Can you kind of explain to us a little bit more about title insurance?
Yes. So there's two different policies. Usually with the purchase and sale, there's a loan. So there's the homeowner's policy, which protects the sellers. And then there's the lender's policy, which protects the lenders. And the policy does change over, and it goes with the property, or I'm sorry, it goes with the buyers for the life that they own the property. The lender's policy follows them as long as they have the loan.
Okay.
So, and it guarantees a clear title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what we're always aiming for, right? You know, when you go and buy something, you want to make sure it's working well. One of the other, so that's one of the biggest precautions that sellers and buyers should be doing, is making sure, one, the seller is selling them something that is clear, that is free to put whatever debts and liens you want against your own home, right?
Yeah.
That's where the wealth starts building, is with the property. And one of the biggest liens that goes on the home is that first mortgage for buyers.
Yes.
So that one will show up when you pull up the report, but we're looking for every other one, because that lien will be closed out when the home sells.
Yeah.
Along with any other liens if you leave them open.
Yes, we have to clear all of the seller's, any liens, any deeds of trust, any judgments have to be cleared in order to close.
Absolutely. And that's why there is the title insurance.
Yes.
While all this is going on, you know, Jen's doing her job. I'm over here just sitting here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm still working. The other things that, you know, that the agent is working on, getting it ready for the market, right? Making sure that the rooms are furnished, they're staged so that people can picture themselves living there, you know? You don't want to make it overcrowded with too much furniture. One of the biggest things that we tell people to take down is personal photographs. It just markets better when people can picture their own family there, right? Not somebody else's family. Nothing against your family. I'm sure you have a lovely family, but people want to picture themselves and their family portraits there. So we're taking care of the staging, the photos, and making sure the marketing is ready to go, so that when Jen calls us and says, hey, everything is good to go on title, we're ready to put it on the market. And right before we go on the market, what do? Is that second CMA. Again, as I was mentioning, is very important. We saw a lot of homes that, you know, because it's not an overnight thing. It's not just, hey, I want to sell my home, and we put the post right in front of your house that same night, right? We want to make sure that all these things are taken care of before we get to that point. So it can take a couple weeks. It could take up a month. It could take longer. So when we first did that original CMA, you know, let's say we did it at the beginning of March. The market was still pretty crazy. And then by the time we're finally ready to list, it's middle of April. Well, in April, we saw a lot of changes. And so a lot of people that priced it according to the sales in the first quarter, which is typically what we do, they might have not done a second CMA to make sure, hey, is the market still going on as to what was happening 3 months ago? Not always the case. So that's why it's very important to do a second CMA right before putting it on the market to make sure that it is staying competitive, right? In addition to the photography, the staging, and all the marketing being done, we want to make sure that it's still being priced accordingly. Then that's where, once it has that for sale sign, we're ready to go, everything is rolling. Once we get those offers in hand, we could go into a multiple offer situation. If that's the case, we do have to present every offer immediately. However, we can set what's called an offer review date, where you can review all offers at a certain time, and that's where we start comparing the terms. We start comparing the prices. If any of them put any escalation clauses on there, we let you know, hey, these buyers are willing to go up to this. This is what would trigger that. So we start comparing the different offers. That's in a multiple offer situation. We do see those still happening nowadays. Maybe not as frequently, maybe not as many, but they do still happen. Because as I mentioned, even though the interest rates have gone up, there is still low inventory in the market right now. Jen can attest to that.
Yes.
She was shopping
Sure
for a little bit.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, inventories. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the toughest things out of everything, and why we still see prices staying stable and still on the higher end is because there is low inventory. So once we do decide on an offer that we want to accept, that's where we go into mutual contract and when we open escrow. Now, title and escrow tend to be the same company 99% of the time. However, there are situations where we're using one company for title and another company for escrow. That's not as important. It does make it just a little bit trickier because it's not all in one office, but that doesn't make it impossible at all.
No.
So that's, so we have everything in house with Jen, right?
Yes, you do.
And we go and open escrow. And I say, hey, Jen, we've accepted an offer. We're ready to open escrow. So what does it mean to open escrow?
So at the time, we would get the purchase and sale. We send that to our open order desk. They add the buyer's information to title. They do run another title report just in case. And then we have it with both buyers and sellers and hopefully lenders on there.
Yep.
And then, so we, again, review it to see if anything comes up. And then we let everybody know, we review it and let them know exactly what we find on there.
Yeah.
If there's any issues, we address them right then to get the ball rolling. So
yeah. So one of the ways, so title and escrow are neutral parties. They want to make sure everybody is getting the end of the deal that they bargained for.
Yes.
I'm not saying, that everybody's got a fair deal, because that should have been negotiated between the agents.
Right.
Title and escrow are simply there to follow the instructions given per the contract. So the contract is their manual as to how they should be closing. And that's essentially what they are doing. So they are a neutral party to the transaction. They're not there representing one or the other, but rather the transaction itself. So that being said, escrow, the one way I like to describe it is kind of balancing your checkbook. For those of you that still use a checkbook.
Yes.
Now that we have Zelle and Venmo and all that, right?
Yeah. Online banking.
Yeah.
So easy.
So for those of you that did balance a checkbook,
yes.
That's essentially what escrow is doing. These credits are given to this party. This credit is given to this party. This party owes this much, and they're just making sure that it all equals out at the very end.
Yes.
So that's escrow's job, and they're great at it. They communicate. Anytime anybody wants to make any changes, it has to be agreed upon the entire party. You cannot call escrow and say, hey, escrow, we actually want to make this change.
Yeah.
They're going to call up everybody and say, hey, Josh called me and said he wants to make this change. Did everybody agree on this? Because I want to see it in writing.
Yes, we have to have everything in writing, everything agreed upon by all parties.
signatures, everything. There should be a form attached to that request.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what they're there for. They're essentially the ref of the party.
Yeah.
They want to make sure everybody gets exactly what they asked for
Mhm.
and exactly what they promised. So all this being said, who pays for what costs?
So with just standard title and escrow fees, with the escrow fee, it is split 50-50 with the buyer and the
Okay.
seller. And then the lender's policy is paid by the buyer, owner's policy is paid by the seller.
Okay.
And then recording fees. There's a couple that the seller may pay, but usually the buyer pays the recording fees as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And then any other additional fees, we go by the purchase and sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's where each party does have their own closing costs. Typically speaking, in addition to these closing costs, the buyer has their loan fees. Within the loan fees, when the loan officer, as we talked about it yesterday in our loans class, the buyer has all their fees there, and within that form, it also outlines what the approximate fees for title and escrow will be. So when the buyer is presented with these are the total costs, that's what they're presented. Same thing when the agent and title or escrow can present an earnings statement. So what is expected that the seller will come out with? What kind of paycheck will they get at the end of the transaction? These are the costs that are included in that. In addition to those closing costs that Jen just mentioned, typically the seller is the one that pays for the commission for both the listing agent and the buyer's agent. However, the way that works, and I know it sounds like you're paying for two different agents, but in reality, you're paying for one agent. You're paying for the listing agent. However, in order for us as a listing agent to make that more enticing, let's say Jen is a real estate agent, right? And I say, hey, Jen, I got offered X amount of commission. I'll give you half of that if you bring me a buyer.
Yeah.
Jen's going to be like,
it's a great
on
deal.
it. And so this is why a lot of times people think that the seller's paying for both people's commission. But no, in reality, they're just paying for the listing agent for their commission. The fact that the listing agent is then offering half or however much they do offer as a finder's fee, so to speak, that's where the commission gets split between the two parties.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that.
So,
yeah, I like
that. So those and all of that is calculated so you have an estimate right from the beginning. Hey, this is the price that I think the home should sell for based on, equities, title and escrow and all their fees. This is about how much you can expect to come out with at the end of this sale if it sells at this price that we listed at. So that's essentially what the CMA also helps for, to get a net proceeds estimate.
Yes.
So once all that is done, everybody gets settled with, okay, this is who's doing this is who's doing that. That's then where the lender finishes doing their stuff, and escrow is waiting for a call from the lender or an email. How does
Usually
that work?
An email.
An
yes.
email.
Yeah. We have a process. Yes, they send us their fees, and then we put them on the settlement statement, which is pretty much a giant receipt, like you were talking about, checks and balances. And then we send that back to them, make sure all the figures match, and then we receive the loan documents for signing.
Yep.
At which point we call and make the appointments, which is exciting for everyone.
Yes.
Close to closing.
So once everybody has signed, what happens after that?
So after signing,
or better yet, how do signings happen nowadays?
We usually, there's a couple different options. We have, and most companies have their notaries.
Yes.
And they go out to your home or to your work, and they'll meet you and bring your documents, do your signing. They bring them back to us, and we send them to the lender.
Yeah.
And you're always more than welcome to go to the offices, but we like to have options for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of times, I've had a lot of friends ask me, they're like, "Oh, do we get to sit at a table where everybody's signing documents and we're all just passing?" I'm like, those days are gone.
Yes, yes.
As fun as that is, everybody kind of makes their own schedule, right? And says, "Okay, I'm available this day." Okay, so Esther is going to schedule signings, as Jen was saying, whether you want to come to the office or if you want a notary to come out to you. There is a minimal fee for having a notary come to you, but it is very, very convenient. There was one time where, actually, on my house, when I closed on my house, it was supposed to close a week later.
Oh.
And I was on vacation the week before the closing, and I was going to be back in time and everything, right? I had planned it accordingly. They're like, "We're actually ready to close today." I'm like, "I'm in Vegas visiting family right now. Like,
Yeah, right.
what do I do?" They're like, they sent a notary over. They
Yes.
brought all the documents, and I signed right there in my brother's kitchen for my
Yeah.
house.
We try and make it really convenient. We have notaries all over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I had to wait to get my keys once I got back.
Yes.
But yeah, so then they submit it off to the county to get recorded so that it shows who the new buyers are and that the sellers are no longer legally obligated to anything
Yes.
to this home.
Mhm.
Once that does happen, that's where Jen calls me, "Hey, Josh, guess what?"
Yep, got great news.
And she'll usually ask, "Do you want me to call your clients or do you want to call them?" I'm like, "I will call them, Jen. Thank you so much." And that's where we go and let them know, like, "Hey, you're done. This is over with. Your paycheck is coming."
Yes.
So
That's always fun to deliver that news.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's essentially how to sell your home in 5
Yeah.
simple steps. A lot of the work does happen behind the scenes, and a lot of people get, I wouldn't say concerned, but I remember when I purchased my first property, I was very much on the point where I'm like, "What's going on? Why am I not hearing from anyone? What like was?" And that to me was just the most stressful part, is not knowing what was happening. So do have an understanding that a lot of this stuff does happen behind the scenes. We have a whole team working behind the scenes. You have title, you have escrow, you have the lender, you have the insurance agent. You want to make sure that the home is insured before you drive off the lot with it, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
There's so many people behind the scenes that it can feel very radio silent on the front end, but on the back end, we are definitely working hard for you.
We are.
Making sure everything is going accordingly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all working together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it can be a little scary, the radio
Yes.
silence. So
Yep.
yeah. I always like to keep the communication line open. And
Yeah.
if they want to reach out to us just for reassurance,
And
always
if you
more than
ever,
welcome.
if you ever have any doubts during your transaction, it never hesitate to ask, because I mean, everybody, any kind of job, we all tend to assume that this is common knowledge, right? But this is exactly why we're giving these live sessions, so that people can ask any questions that they want to ask. Make sure that they know what to even ask, right? Where to even start. So any questions that come up after this session, this video will stay on the channel, so feel free to review it if you want. But if you want to get in touch with any of us, give us a call, shoot us a text, an email. My phone number is 206-596-5429. My email is thebilingualagent@gmail.com. Jen, how can they reach you?
You can reach me by cell phone. My number is 425-525-8282. And my office email is jrobins@equitywa.com.
Thank you very much. And we'll see you next month. If you know anybody that could benefit from this, we do this every month, the third week on Thursday nights. Thank you.
Thank you.